Hello, welcome to Astrology with Jo. Today I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to do a kind of a live reading on the energies that we have around Samhain this year. So this is falling for us in the Southern Hemisphere on the 5th of May. Now, Samhain is a pagan festival that is celebrating the midpoint between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. Now, you may also know this festival as Halloween or All Hallows Eve, and you may be wondering why I'm talking about this in May and not the traditional, or so we think, 31st of October. This is because that the point of that sun cycle of through the seasons occurs in opposites from southern to northern hemisphere. So for us, it's summer. In the northern hemisphere, it's winter. Their Samhain is actually our Beltane, which is high spring going into summer. So this is actually flipped on its head in the southern hemisphere. And if we're actually sticking to the seasonal energies, it is for us at the beginning of May. Some people like to celebrate it on the 30th of April or the 1st or 2nd of May. I prefer to use the exact astrological date when the sun reaches that exact midpoint. For us, this is 15 degrees of Taurus. And as I said, it's landing on the 5th of May this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a few cards. I've got a few decks here and I'm going to be pulling some tarot cards to go with the oracle cards. Now, as you can hear, I am shuffling. I'm doing this live. Hopefully this goes as smoothly as possible so I'm not editing this video for ages. So you're just going to see how I do this in real time, how I just link it to the astrology that we have as well. And as I go through, I'm going to be kind of explaining Samhain a bit more as we go along. Now, the first deck that I'm going to be using is the Seasons of the Witch Samhain Oracle. This is by Lorraine and Juliet Diaz, and this oracle is illustrated by Giada Rose. Let's see what we have here. Ooh, so we have the Journey card. Let me put a little stand here so that you can see it properly and I don't have to keep holding it up and making you dizzy. So this is my card one. This is the energies that we're going through at this time of Samhain. And as you can see, this figure, she's at the beginning of the road here and she's got what looks like a bit of a murky path ahead. It's the beginning of a journey, the first steps taken. And the thing that we have at the time of Samhain is an inward movement. And because this card is dark, this is kind of giving me sort of inner journey vibes. And this is a reminder maybe that we are in a process here. And there are always going to be lessons and discoveries to be made in this inner journey. Now, Samhain is a festival about liminality. It's traditionally, historically said to be the day in the year when the veils between the worlds are thinnest. And if we translate that across to our psyche or our psychology, we can see this as the different energetic bodies or the different layers of our consciousness and subconscious that we can traverse because of the liminality of those boundaries. So we're able to go inward past all of the layers, the inner layers, into our psychic complexes and really delve deep into the darkness to really find out what's going on there. Now, what's interesting is that this figure at the beginning of the path here is kind of correlating to the fact that Samhain is actually said to be the witch's new year. It's the pagan new year because it is the point in the cycle of the sun, the cycle of the seasons, that we are heading into our deepest, darkest time of the year. Everything is at its coldest, everything is at its darkest, the days are at their shortest. So it's about the fact that everything starts in the dark. And so this figure at the beginning of this winding path could be really just honing in on the journeys that we're actually embarking on whether this is a physical journey for you or a new project for you, whatever this might be. We do have Pluto stationing retrograde on the day of Samhain. So this is the Lord of the underworld, and he's going to be stationary on that 3 degrees for basically the whole month of May before he kicks into gear and starts moving truly backwards. But there could be a heaviness and an intensity and a real, even a hyper focus on the inner world here. And this figure in the card, I mean, she's not wearing any clothes. She's bare, she's naked, she doesn't have any possessions, any trappings. It's almost like baring your soul, cracking yourself open and baring your soul, looking at things in the stark black and white truth, and really finding out what is in the darkness here. Because this is a massive year of shifts, changes, and transitions. And perhaps at this time, on this day of Samhain, on the date of the station of Pluto, we might be starting to acknowledge or reclaim any parts of us that we've either been repressing, or any parts of us that have been lurking in the shadows that need some attention to be brought forth. And this is a time of high intuition. This is a time of high sensitivities, and it's about tapping into that darkness, tapping into that inner knowing to be able to navigate this journey with wisdom. Now I'm just going to pull a tarot card to go with this oracle card. I'm again using the Botanica Tarot by Kevin J. Stanton. I used this in my new moon video, my Taurus new moon video. I'm using this deck for the season of Taurus. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, look at those backs, they're so shiny. And it's a floral deck which suits Taurus, but it's also dark, which is suiting this time of the year for us in the southern hemisphere. So let's pull a card and see what kind of a confirmation we get for this journey card that we're going to be going through for Samhain. Oh, hello, you're feeling strong. Ooh. Don't panic. So we got the 9 of Swords there. And isn't that just such a gorgeous picture? So let's pop this here and let's really have a look and see what's going on. And I just recentered that so that you can actually see this card a bit more better. So this is actually, from memory, this is the poppy. This is the poppy flower, and this depiction here is of the 9 of Swords. So the 9 of Swords does speak about high anxieties, the things that keep us awake at night, mental stress, and the panic and the over fatigue that we can go into when our mental processes take over. Now, the interesting thing about this is that really the only planet at the moment that we have in an air sign is Jupiter, in the sign of Gemini. And then, of course, we've got that Pluto in Aquarius, which is that air sign. So I do feel like that this is kindly directly related to that Pluto in Aquarius. And, you know, these mental processes, the power of the mind, it can be just so overwhelmingly powerful. And it's interesting that this card has come up, because the poppy as a representation of this can show us where we might be lying to ourselves or in illusion, or when our mind is taking over and running amok and not showing us the reality. Because poppies, of course, are renowned for their ability to induce calm, rest, sleep, and they make opium. Their opium is the base of a lot of pain relief drugs. They represent sleep. Supposedly, I think I read in the guidebook that they are actually woven into the crowns of the ancient Greek gods of night and death. So it's kind of giving poppy this status of real power to induce death or sleep. And this can sometimes spiral into clinging onto control to have your peace at all costs. And what the Nine of Swords is showing, and what I really feel like at this point in time with this strong Pluto energy, Lord of the underworld energy, tying in with this festival of Samhain, which is about going into the darkness and going into the underworld. The poppy may be telling us that it's time to relinquish that sense of control that you think you might have over certain aspects of your life, or trying to cling to control of something, trying to stay on top of something, trying to overanalyze or have power over by being more powerful or more knowledgeable or more connected, or whatever that is for you. I mean, the poppy, yes, it can give an opportunity to rest, sleep, dream, move through pain with more ease. And on the flip side of that, it's a slippery slope of slipping into things that actually go too far, because poppy, of course, is linked with excess. And I'm just getting, thank you, Neptune in Aries now, because Neptune is, of course, the planet of dreams and sleep. And we've got Neptune on the 1st degree of Aries. Venus is having that conjunction to Neptune. So this is about blending the heart with your dreams. And really, because this is in the sign of Aries, this is making things very, very abrupt, very blatant, very obvious, and very simple. Simplifying all of this. And the Nine of Swords here can be about, it's the most saturated air card in the sword suit, because it's the last number of the minor arcana, because the 10 is the culmination, and then we get back to the numerology of 1, which is the number that we started with. So 9 is actually this hyper saturated mental energy. And the poppy is just showing us that maybe we're skewed in our thinking processes. Maybe we're skewed in trying to use our mind to cling to control and power. And the poppy could both be showing where we might have that delusion or misconception, but it also could be telling us that maybe it is time to relinquish, release, and relax a little bit, so that you can move through any sense of pain or burden, so that you can move through any suffering or grief or sadness, anger, any of these strong emotions that we're having at this time. And getting back to Neptune, Neptune is about compassion. It's about having a compassionate heart for yourself at this time, because Neptune and Pluto are in orb of an operational sextile, which is a 60-degree angle, and that means they're working together favorably. And we have like this invitation or this offer to really be able to blend personal dreams with the power of the analytical mind, but not getting so tangled up with the complexity of things. It's trying to keep things simple, trying to keep things restful, trying to keep things peaceful. This could be a kind of a tango that we're going through at this time. And sometimes what the poppy can actually show, the Nine of Swords, what the Nine of Swords can actually show is perhaps showing the end, because it is that final numbered card. It can show the end of a very mentally entangled situation, a very mentally entangled process. This can be some relief. And if you can actually see the poppy here, it's wilted, the petals are falling, so it's come to the end of its lifespan. There's a couple of droplets coming off with it, which can, maybe they're the white seeds of the poppy that are actually used in the medicaments to make pain relief and sleeping drafts and stuff. Or, it could be tears. For me, they actually look like teardrops, not seeds. It could be a release of any of those more unpleasant, harsher, sad energies and emotions that you're feeling that are tangling up your mental processes. It's that release, it's the letting go, it's the end. It's the end of all of that. And if we go back to the card that this Nine of Swords is paired with, this Journey card, you know, we've got the end here with the Nine of Swords and the beginning of another journey. So it's almost like you have to let your mind be. You have to let your mind be to be able to go within. You have to give yourself rest. And it's about really questioning where any of those deep-seated fears, anxieties, and nightmares are actually coming from, and if they're based in reality or not. Because the poppy, of course, can represent dreams and a very unreal kind of a place. So the next card I'm going to pull, now don't laugh, I know it's a bit cheesy, but it's just so cute. So this is the Modern Wiccan Book of Spells. Each card has a little different witch on it, and I think they're just a bit of fun, they're just a bit adorable. And Halloween, of course, if you celebrate it, it's all about trick or treat. It can be a bit mischievous. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of lighthearted fun into the reading and see what message we get. Now, the other thing about Samhain, the other thing apart from darkness, is that it is also about surrender. It's about that descent and surrendering into the darkness so that you can tap into that liminal space that I mentioned in terms of having a deeper, further, more profound sight into your energetic senses. And this could be in terms with communication with other energies, and this can be in terms of having a clear line of communication to the many different levels of yourself, tapping into your emotional body, tapping into your physical body. Some people, myself included, we can be so trapped in our heads that sometimes the physicality of life can really escape us. And that energy of Samhain is the opportunity to traverse all of the different levels of yourself that are deep and that are quite basic, really, and have a clear line of communication so that we can become more embodied and create from a more holistic space. Doesn't she just look like a badass? Silver Moon Witch, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I have to admit that I am a bit new to this deck, so I'm going to have to look this one up. I haven't pulled her before, but she looks like she has all of the power. I mean, if that is not a representation of Pluto, I don't know what is. She's got the phases of the moon in her hands. She's queen of the ocean. She can make a storm if she wants to. These poor people on the boat are probably terrified for their lives at the moment. But the guidebook is actually saying that this is a mistress of women, and she's turning the tide in your favor. And this is also a reference to the next full moon that we're going to have. Now, the next full moon that we're going to have is actually on the 13th of May. It's a full moon in Scorpio, very appropriate, very spooky. And I'm just going to have a quick look here. There's actually a lot happening on that day. So we've got Pluto retrograde being squared by Mercury, the god of communication. So this could be some friction around communicating with the underworld. So like something that you're in communication with at this time, whether that's a person, whether that's a part of yourself, because it's this square of Mercury to Pluto, it's going to be on the day of the full moon, which is already a high sort of emotional charge. There could be some powerful words. There could be some powerful things that are communicated that could be potentially quite dark or confronting or painful. And this, of course, can be your self-communication with the things that you're unearthing and realizing within yourself. But with this silver moon witch here, you know, she's showing us the power See, the power of the waves is the power of the ocean, which is the power, Pluto, of that inner world, of the darkness. And not to feel, the lesson here is not to feel so frightened by it or even confronted by it, which is easier said than done, because it can be very confronting. There is a trove of potentially quite nasty things in your own underbelly, in our own underbelly, that have been festering for a while. But the sheer power that we get from tapping into that and acknowledging it and working through it, and the force of the emotion that you have around that, it's possibly one of the most powerful forces that we have as a human being. And this is also about, with the moons on the top there, you can see that this is also about the cycles, which is what Pluto is all about as well. Samhain is about going into the darkness, going into the deep to begin anew through that kind of a womb space, and that is a cyclical energy as well. So this is about accepting the cycles. And this is also about, I kind of think, like this little boat on the card, it's not engulfed by the waves. Can you see it's kind of like riding the wave? And I'm sure if I was on that ship, I would be having kittens. But it's like this boat is maneuvering. It's maneuvering. It's using the resources, which is Taurus, and it's also Pluto and Scorpio. Using the resources and the skills that you have to navigate these energies with wisdom. And it's kind of like a reclamation of the inner strength and fortitude that you do have amongst any tempestuous times. Now, just while I shuffle for the tarot card correspondence for this card, the other thing that I want to speak about is the sort of deity aspect of Samhain. So we've got the god and the goddess as representations of the divine yin and the divine yang in terms of the cycle of the seasons. And by the time we get to Samhain, the goddess is actually reigning in her crone aspect. So it's the aged lady, the lady who is past her fertile youth and her childbearing years, and she is now fertile in wisdom and experience and the magic that comes from that. And a card just flew out. What did we get? Ooh, okay. What do we have here? Let's pop this one down. So this is the Four of Wands. Now, you might not quite be able to tell what this card's actually depicting, but these are actually a type of distaff which was used to spin and weave wool to make clothes, to make bedding, to make fabric, to be able to lead a comfortable life. Now, weirdly, the flower or the plant depicted on this card is actually supposed to be a type of grass. And it's called lady's bedstraw because it's what was stuffed into mattresses. And it was a kind of grass that was sort of a natural insect repellent, and it has a kind of a warding off kind of property. So it's fairly protective. It's also known as Frigg's grass. Now, Frigg was an ancient Norse goddess of the home and of weaving. And now the Four of Wands is usually quite a celebratory card. The Wands is a fire suit. So this is about warmth. This is about rejoicing and gratitude and nearly kind of like a happily ever after kind of an energy. And with the lady's bedstraw here, it's kind of like through feeling protected and through feeling safe. And 4 is a very stable number as well. So this could just be a reminder here at this full moon that we're having, this very powerful Scorpio full moon that's going to teach us how to ride the waves of the deep, dark underworld and your own emotions. This could also be a reminder here to have some have some hope, and also have gratitude for yourself. Have an acceptance of how far you've already come, what you've already built, and what is stable in your life, and what you have to celebrate in your life. Sometimes the Four of Wands can actually depict a sort of a marriage scene. I mean, the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck has an actual marriage depicted on the card. And so this sort of a protective, homey kind of energy with the Four of Wands here is just kind of giving me a sense of holding on to your inner fire, holding on to your inner warmth, and rejoicing and having gratitude for that inner fire and for the strength that you have. And this could be about, you know, really tapping into that joy, tapping into that strength. I mean, we do have that Mars in bubbly, bright, enthusiastic Leo, who is still in orb of an opposition to Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, and who seems to be ruling this Samhain day. So we do have him in play. He's now clearing his retrograde zone. So we're going to have some more dramatic forward motion. We're going to have some more color, have some more joy. And this can be a reminder here to just, you know, if things seem intense, if things seem like they're in this very, very what's the word, sort of like consuming or like concentrated, you know, transmutation, metamorphosis kind of an energy. This is a reminder that you are protected. This is a reminder that there is joy and there is fire within you, and it's just a reminder to tap into that and to see kind of like the light from at the end of the tunnel. It's like, you know, you're in hell and you're looking up into the light of day, and the light is there, and this is what we're going to be moving through in this underworld process. And you know, we've got so much in fire here. We've got Neptune and Venus at the beginning degrees of Aries. Venus, of course, is ruling this sun in Taurus, who is giving us our 15-degree Samhain degree. We've got Mars in Leo, as I've mentioned. So there is a lot of fire. There is a lot of joy. There is a lot of passion, inspiration, and creativity to tap into. And there could be a lot of creation and creativity coming from this inner world, underworld journey that we're moving through. So the full moon also, again, that full moon is going to be on the 13th of May, that this witchy card, this silver moon witch, is kind of pointing me towards. The full moon is again about a celebration. It's about, you know, rejoicing. It's the culmination and fruition of an energy. So this really can be looking back at a journey and celebrating about how far you've come and how empowered that you are becoming. Now let's have another little chat about Samhain while I shuffle for my next card. Now, the next deck that I'm using is the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck by Krans. Now, it has an obnoxiously big box and an obnoxiously difficult shape to shuffle, but they're gorgeous, profound cards, so I do like using them. And because this is Samhain, ruled by the forces of the underworld and going into the darkness, and kind of all about that alchemical process of transformation, like, I just feel like that the alchemy deck was very appropriate for this season. And I was talking about before I pulled that card, about the goddess reigning in crone aspect in Samhain. And this is the time that the yang, which is representative of the god, which is about the sun and the heat of life, this is when that passes into the underworld, and it will be reborn again. The god will be reborn through the goddess at Yule, at the winter solstice. So this is the time when that yang, heat, fire, bright energy passes into the underworld, goes into hibernation, so to speak, to be reborn. So this is a transformation, cyclical death, life, rebirth process, as I mentioned before, in those cycles. And so it also is a time to honor the ancestors, to honor those who have come before, to, as I said, perhaps even tap into the liminal spaces in your life not just within yourself, not just within, external energies, but also of time. So if you go into any meditations and, take whatever resonates with you. And if you don't want to meditate and necessarily communicate with spirits past, you can still connect to their energy and acknowledge with love those who have come before you and to honor them. Now, this is a time of divination, of all kinds of sight and clairs, spirit communication. If you're into that, go for it. Personally, I don't really believe in bringing back the dead when they have already passed on. It's not necessarily within my scope to do that at all. I'm not going to go into that. Everyone has their own personal preference. I believe that what is past is past. Now, another interesting thing that we have here is that divine feminine, because the goddess is reigning in the dark half of the year. The yin is in power, and it's also metaphorically about a reclamation of that yin power within you. So there is a lot of fiery energy at this time. There's a lot of ego, and we have been conditioned to come from a place of conscious ego, of spreading your fire, and the receptivity in the emotional world and your own psychic needs get overlooked in the face of ambition and conforming to convention. And one of the things about Samhain is it gives an opportunity to look at those things that are more taboo. You'll never believe which card I just drew. It's an opportunity to look at those things that are seen as a bit more taboo, things that aren't spoken about. And this doesn't have to be topics. This can just be the parts of yourself and the parts of your life, those hard, dark, messy or ugly parts of yourself that you don't want to acknowledge. Look what we got. Venus. How very appropriate. My southern hemispheric friends who celebrate Samhain with the sun reigning in Taurus, we have a confirmation that we're doing things right. Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is ruling Samhain, our Samhain in the southern hemisphere. This is fascinating because Venus is about love and creation and magnetism and life. And in the northern hemisphere, Scorpio is what the sun is occupying at the time of Samhain, which is of course ruled by the lord of the underworld, Pluto, which does make a bit more sense. The facets that we're getting here through the astrology take a different lens. And to be fair for us, we don't necessarily experience deep, harsh winters here. I reserve the right as an Australian to complain whenever I get below 24 degrees Celsius. So you can imagine that our winters are not that harsh. So this could also kind of be reflective of the fact that the land doesn't become barren. The leaves do not fall off the trees here in the southern hemisphere. There is still life. And more to the point, this is really teaching us that there is still love. This is about the power of the heart. This is about creation. Look at all those rainbow colors on this card. Venus is that divine yin that I was literally just speaking about. And it's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that perhaps have you, in the past, maybe historically, they've had you doubting your sense of worth, doubting your own validity. And through that, your abundance perhaps has been hindered, your relationships and your heart sharing perhaps has been hindered. And so Venus here at this time, ruling this underworld journey, is just reminding us that there is still life in the darkness. In fact, this void, this darkness, this black, frightening space is actually a point of infinity. It's a metaphorical womb space where things are just so fertile. There's anything that is possible. And through, I don't want to detract from how difficult these psychological and emotional and even spiritual journeys can be, but it's kind of like having the Four of Wands before. I mean, speaking of which, I'll shuffle for a tarot card for this. There is still life, no matter how harsh or frightening things get, there is always hope. And when in doubt, this is really a signal for me to go into your own heart, to really embody a sense of self-worth, because that's what Venus teaches. And it's only through that we're actually able to have healthy, balanced relationships, which is the other thing that Venus rules. And, you know, if we're looking at all of the cards that we've pulled, I mean, we had that Samhain card, which was about, you know, bearing everything at the beginning of the journey. And then the Knight of Swords with that poppy there was about ending something, ending the illusion, relinquishing control, giving yourself permission to rest, and perhaps looking at where any of your anxieties or nightmares or needs to hold on to control is coming from, and whether that is a real authentic place or whether it is a construct that no longer has an energetic space in your life. And that full moon, silver moon witch card, the silver moon witch, yes, that's right. You know, she's showing us that this is a time to really embrace the power of your underworld, embrace the power of your emotions. There's going to be some kind of strong, powerful communication at the full moon that we have on the 13th of May that is going to be challenging. But the Four of Wands that I drew there is with that Frig's grass on it is really showing that we are protected in this time, that there is hope, there is warmth, there is fire, tapping into your own inner fire, and there is so much to celebrate in this journey, and it's about taking the time to rejoice. And then this Venus alchemical archetype comes up to say, love, work on your heart. This inner process could even be a heart process for you. Venus is still clearing her retrograde zone, by the way. She won't be clearing it until the 16th of May, I believe. Whoa, that one just flew out. Ha! Speaking of the heart, the rose. Okay. So, speaking of Venus and the heart, we have the literal flower of love, the rose, coming up here. This is actually the Hierophant card. Now, if any of you are familiar with tarot, you probably know that the Hierophant's traditional depiction is of a pope, and it is not everybody's favorite card. I don't mind it. I have to say, 5, because it's the number 5 card in the tarot, it has a special place in my heart. 5 is actually a Venus number. See, the synchronicities, you can't make this stuff up. The Hierophant is about higher learning, higher knowledge, being taught or teaching. And this, in the olden days, was usually directly from religion. You know, the Pope was your channel to the divine, to divine knowledge. But the Hierophant can represent divine knowledge itself and a conduit through which that is received or given. So this can be through an astrologer, a tarot reader, a book, a library, you know, a yoga teacher, being in meditation. It can be through anything that gives you sort of a structural form from which you can learn and connect to a higher meaning, higher knowledge. This is what the Hierophant represents. And I love that this deck uses the rose, the symbol of the heart, you know, for this rather rigid reputation for the Hierophant. And it can also represent too a spiritual enlightenment, you know. And it's, you know, I think this card through the red and the white, it's kind of trying to represent a balance between, you know, the heart and the mind, the inner and the outer, the conscious and the unconscious, the red of the passion and the white of dispassion. And, you know, it can represent some kind of guidance coming through in being able to balance these and integrate them. And this can also be about the faith that you have in whichever practice you are working through yourself, whether you even just do yoga, if you don't do anything, if you just randomly watch astrology videos, whatever it is, there could be some kind of higher guidance that you are getting through this. I do believe that issues with the Pope are going to be at the fore, maybe even around Samhain, who knows. But this is about opening your heart, to open your mind, to open your crown chakra, to open to that higher spiritual energy. Remember that the rose has thorns, so the rose can draw blood. So this is about the passions of life, as well as about enlightenment and connection to cosmos, source, deity, the divine, whatever that means to you. And it's not about having one or the other. It's about the fact that you are both, and you can embody both and learn about both at the same time. And in fact, you can't really have one without the other. We're on the 3D plane, living in a 3D reality. You cannot have just higher knowledge, higher meaning, source, and deity. I mean, you can be a yogi living up on a mountain learning to levitate and starving yourself for enlightenment. Go ahead, that's fine. But there is so much to learn from life, living in the messy world that we live in, and learning about yourself. And I think that's what the rose in this card is trying to represent. And it's really reflecting this Venus alchemy card that we've pulled in, tapping into your heart, centering and going deeper into your heart, into your hope, into your self-worth, and into your love, to be able to tap into that higher knowing. Okay? And that is kind of what this Samhain is probably going to be about. It's about a heart deepening. This can potentially be not pain-free. This might be difficult. It is an underworld journey, but it is also a transmutation, metamorphosis, and empowerment journey. And it is also about, accepting the duality and accepting that there are cycles in life, and about learning from it with the Hierophant here. Okay, so just to recap, we first drew the journey. Then we pulled the Nine of Swords with the poppy. We then had the badass Silver Moon Witch. That full moon on the 13th of May is going to be a big one. But don't forget to celebrate, because we do have that Four of Wands there. And then of course we got Venus and the Hierophant with the rose. That's it for me from today. I really do hope that you enjoyed this ad hoc reading. I hope it flowed okay for you. I hope you're able to follow along. I wish you a very profound and empowering Samhain on Monday, the 5th of May. And then I hope that this season enriches you, gives you wisdom, helps you to go deeper so that you can go higher. Thanks so much again for listening, and I will see you in my next video. Ciao for now.